Now that the Angels are back to 500 as a team, will they be buyers or sellers in the trade market? Before we get into that, though, explain to us what the trade deadline is, why it's significant, and what teams tend to do.
Well, it's usually July 31st. This year they moved it to July 30th just because they wanted it to come on a Friday instead of a Saturday, because on a Saturday there's a lot of day games going on and they didn't want people getting traded in the middle of a day game. So it's July 30th this year. And basically it is the time that the teams that are out of the race trade away their better players to the teams that are in the race. And the teams that are out of it figure the players aren't helping them any, and they'd rather get young players in return. It's usually players who are going to be free agents at the end of the year. So if you're a team that's not going anywhere and you have a guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, he's really not going to help you at all the rest of the year. But you could trade him to a contender that could use him, and that contender could send you back young players that could help you for years to come. So that is basically what happens every year at around July 31st.
What do you think the Angels would do this year?
Well, I have no idea because, as you said, they're at 500, which means they could go either way. I think right now they're probably a little closer to being sellers, which would mean that they would be trading away their players just because they're still pretty far out of the race. But they do have enough time, and they are getting Mike Trout back. So if they play well in the next 3 weeks, they could get close enough to want to be buyers and acquire players to help them.
How much better do they have to be the buyers in the market?
I would say if they're within 5 or 6 games of a playoff spot, they could do that. So they still need to improve a little bit from where they are right now.
Who are some big names in this market this year?
I haven't even really looked at that very much. I know there's a guy, Adam Frazier, second baseman for the Pirates, is a guy that a lot of people are talking about. He would not be a guy of interest to the Angels because they really need pitchers. But any pitcher on the Rangers is probably Kyle Gibson is probably a guy that would have some interest. The Rockies have a pitcher named John Gray and Herman Marquez that would be of interest to some teams. They have some relievers. Michael Givens is one. So there are many, many more guys that I'm just not coming up with right now off the top of my head. But usually if you just look at the bad teams and look at who are the best pitchers on the bad teams, that's how you figure it out.
And if the Angels were to become the buyers, they'll definitely be looking for pitchers, right?
Yeah, I think that is what they need for sure. Possibly outfielder too, just because they have Taylor Ward right now as their right fielder, basically. When Mike Trout comes back, he's the right fielder. He's been pretty good for a little while, but I think that if they had a chance to get a more experienced, better hitter to play right field for the rest of the season, I think they might look at that too.
What happened to Joe Adell?
He just wasn't ready to be in the big leagues last year. He had a lot of trouble defensively. He had a lot of trouble striking out. His offense overall wasn't very good. They just felt like he needed more seasoning. This year in AAA, he's done pretty well. He's hit a lot of homers, but he's still striking out quite a bit. And I think the defense is still something that he needs to work on. So I don't think the Angels want to call him up again until they're confident that he is going to be good to go and he's not going to have these issues anymore, and they're not going to have to send him back again.
Do you think that's going to happen this year?
I think it very well could. I think it's possible. If he just has 3 good weeks where things look a lot better, then he could be up. So
will there be a nickname day? So I guess the questioner's referring to the Players Weekend this year. Will there be that day this year?
Yeah, I believe they're having it this year, and it actually coincides with the Little League Classic, which is the Little League World Series in Williamsport. Happens every year in August, and for the last several years, Major League Baseball has played a game in Williamsport that weekend, and this year the Angels are playing in it. So it's going to be pretty interesting from the Angels' point of view. They're playing the Indians. I believe it's August 21st or 2nd, somewhere around there. And that usually is on Players Weekend.
Will Ohtani be able to join the Hall of Fame as a Japanese citizen?
Absolutely. There's the Hall of Fame has no national requirements. There's lots of players in the Hall of Fame that are not from the United States. Ichiro is going to be in the Hall of Fame for sure as soon as he's eligible.
I mean, this is, this is for the distant future. What do you think it takes for Ohtani to become a Hall of Famer as a two-way player? Like, do you have any idea, like, what it takes?
He's such a long way away from that it's hard to say. But if he continues, well, first of all, you have to play 10 years before you're even eligible for the Hall of Fame. So he's still got a little ways to go before that. And if he plays 10 years and he's a successful two-way player for that entire time, I think that would put him pretty close to the Hall of Fame.
How do major league teams decide their batting orders? This question often feels confused. Why is this guy in the leadoff spot and why is this guy batting fourth?
Well, generally speaking, you want your leadoff hitter to be a guy who gets on base a lot, has a high on base percentage. And then your best hitters on the team are usually hit second or third. And then the number 4 hitter is one of your best power hitters. And then after that, it just sort of flows basically in order of how good the hitters are from 5 down to 9. A lot of times people are moved into sort of non-traditional spots just to maybe help them out of a slump. That's what happened with Justin Upton with the Angels. He's normally was a guy who would hit 4th or 5th, and he was in a slump. So Joe Madden moved him up into the leadoff spot. And the thinking was that if he was in the leadoff spot, he would just focus more on getting hits and getting on base and not so much hitting home runs. And that could help his approach. And it actually, he did much better once he moved there, whether it was a coincidence that he was going to get better anyway, or if he actually did change his approach because the batting order, we don't know, but it's gone so well. So Joe Madden wants to keep him there. David Fletcher was their leadoff hitter for the last couple of years, and he's more of a prototypical guy because doesn't have very much power, but he got on base pretty well. He runs pretty well. So that's kind of the more standard type leadoff hitter.
I guess what confuses people in Japan are those hitting second and third, because things have changed over the past 10, 20 years in major leagues as well, right?
It used to be your best hitter hit third, period. No doubt about it. But then there was a lot of research that showed that actually your best hitter should probably hit second just because he comes to bat more often. And the number 3 hitter comes up with 2 outs and nobody on base a lot. So you don't want that to happen. So now I would say it's probably split in the major leagues. That if you go through teams and you pick out who's their absolute best hitter, probably it's half and half of whether that hitter hits second or third. And in a situation like the Angels, when they obviously have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani together, it's the best of both worlds because they can have one of them hitting second and one of them hitting third. So you can't go wrong with either one.
Well, that's all the questions that we have so far. Do you have any message? Do you have any message for our Japanese followers?
I just want to say thanks everybody for your questions and thanks for following, and hopefully we'll do this again.